Hello and welcome to the Mineral Rights Podcast. My name is Matt Sands, and I'm joined by my co host, Justin Williams, and we're here to help you make the most of your minerals and royalties. And this week's episode, we're going to talk about the next video in the series of how to navigate the state oil and gas commission websites. And we decided to focus on Utah for this one. Stay tuned if you have not had the chance to take a look at our other videos. If we haven't covered your state yet, we will eventually, but be sure to check out the videos that we have recorded on how to do this. And all of this content is also part of my online course, Mineral Management Basics, where I walk you through step by step how to locate your interests, how to do a title search, how to figure out the difference between the different types of mineral and royalties, and all of the nuances around oil and gas ownership. And specifically, what we're interested in today, Justin, is to talk about how do we navigate these state oil and gas commission websites to figure out what the oil and gas potential of our interests are?
You nailed it, Matt. And there's several reasons that you need to look up these records throughout the process of managing your minerals. And Matt, as you mentioned with your course, this video series kind of assumes that you have a basic understanding of how to read that legal description and a basic understanding of managing your mineral rights. And Matt, your course is a really great place to start to build that foundation if you don't have that knowledge.
Exactly. And we're not going to dive into some of the definitions and things like that. This assumes that you understand the basics already. But most importantly, you're probably wondering, okay, how do I actually figure out where my interests are located on a map? How do I know if there are any wells that I should be getting paid royalties on? And that's what we're going to talk about today. And Justin, I think one of the biggest questions is around the ownership of minerals and royalties. It comes down to getting paid correctly. And what we're going to talk about is how to do that and how to figure out, should you have an interest in a well or not? If there's some permits nearby, if there are rigs perhaps, or if these wells, if they're near your property, you can figure out if you should have an interest. And there's definitely some key events and some different tools out there that may notify you if there's a rig nearby or if there's new permits. And so this is where you would need to be able to dig in a little bit deeper to figure out should you be getting paid.
You said it, Matt, and it all starts with the legal description. So let's dive into that for Utah.
Yeah, let's talk about Utah. And I just picked a random location here in Duchesne County, Utah. This is in the middle of the Uinta Basin. If you don't have familiarity with Utah, that's really where most of the activity is. There's horizontal drilling there. It's sort of a heavy oil that they produce. It is a waxy crude, so it's used in different lubricants and different things like that. So it's very important and it's in demand for that reason. The difficulty is trying to get the oil out of the Uinta Basin. And that's could be a subject of a whole nother episode. In fact, we did cover in an audio only episode more about the Uinta Basin, and we'll link to that episode in the show notes if you're listening to this on the podcast or in the description below if you're watching this on YouTube. But basically, the Uinta Basin, it's a fairly small area where they're focused on drilling as you compare to places like West Texas, which is, thousands of square mile. Utah is a very different situation where it's a very concentrated area, at least right now, where they have found it economic to drill for these horizontal wells. And so you can see here, each of these squares is a township. And, it's roughly, I'll say, like six townships east to west and probably three or four townships north to south. So it's a very small area relative to, again, those some of those other bigger basins or plays that other operators are going after. But there's definitely activity going on here. And you can see here with these blue lines, these are the horizontal well bores. And so, like we've talked about in other episodes, for this case, I picked a tract in a township 4 South, range 3 West. And in this situation, you can just zoom in and kind of look for the townships and go that route. That is one way that you can navigate this website. So if we're trying to find something here, and again, we're looking, you can use the old scroll and zoom method, which, is just looking for the township numbers there and then moving around until you can actually find the one you're looking for. And again, we're looking for 4 South, 3 West. So that should be right around here. And section 3, which is this section here. It looks like there is one horizontal well going through that section. So if you had minerals in section 3. Just at first glance, looking at this well, I'm assuming that the all of the minerals in section 3 and section 10 would be pulled together in a 1,280 acre drilling and spacing unit. We can confirm that really quickly here using the Utah website. We'll click on that well and it will pull up information on that well, including the spacing order. So I'm going to open that in a new tab. And where you want to start with looking for information on your oil and gas wells, the types of information you should find and should have copies of are any pooling and spacing orders with the State Oil and Gas Commission. And so that's what this particular document is here. In this case, it shows that the Lower Green River and Wasatch formations are pooled, and yeah, 1,280 acres. So we can find out more for sure. There'll be all of the information in terms of the exhibits and all of the stuff that the operator had submitted. There'll be a list of interested parties. So that's all of the working interest owners as well as the mineral owners. So you can see that. What I'm really wanting to see is the drilling permit because that'll often contain that information as well. And sure enough, here it looks like there's 1,280 acres. This is the Green River formation that they're targeting. It shows you when the permit was issued in November of 2017. And there is more information here as far as surface location and proposed depth and all of that kind of stuff. For me, you can view it in an image and that helps for sure. But a lot of times it's just easier to look at the well file itself. So we will pull that up and it has a lot of really useful information. So you'll see here well file. So Utah has that available for you to download. It's kind of a large file, but it has the original drilling permit. It'll have copies of any maps or plats in there. And like we talk about, Justin, the plat map is kind of the key piece of information as you're figuring out whether or not your minerals should be included in part of one of these drilling or spacing units. So just as we scroll down, we can see the location plat. And again, if we have minerals in section 3, we are good because the producing interval is right there at the top and it goes through most of this section. The bottom hole is down there in section 10. And it looks like the entirety of section 3 and section 10 are part of this spacing unit. So that 1,280 acres. So that's one way we can confirm that our minerals are indeed part of what that well is going to be producing from. And therefore, we should have a royalty interest in this well. And this is just another example of that. And so, where we have some fee minerals in section 3, let's say we had minerals down here, it would have names of the leases. In this case, the Ute Indian tribe also has an interest in this dark green section, and this light green. And then there are no federal minerals there. So, kind of useful information that they include here in these submittals in Utah in terms of fee minerals, who has what, leases, and has lots of useful information here just in this particular well file. And again, this is something I would recommend if you had an interest in this well. Download this to your computer so you have easy access to it, so you can see all the information about the well should you need it. So a good piece of information there to have. Again, most important, usually, Justin, is to check your revenue statement to make sure you're getting paid correctly. And so one of the ways to do that is to check the volume of oil or gas that was produced and sold, and then what you were paid on. And what we can do is look at the state data here and see how many barrels of oil, how many MCF of gas were produced for each month, and then compare that to our check statement. Now, one thing to keep in mind is they may actually sell more or less than what was actually produced. If there are tanks on site, they may store some of that oil in tanks and sell less than 1,880 barrels, for example, for the month of October. But you could look in and see how much is produced. And then from that, you should see roughly that same amount that you were paid on for that month. Gas is a little bit trickier because there can be natural gas liquids that are extracted out. So it's not uncommon to see a smaller volume of gas reported on your check statement, and that's totally fine. In that situation, you would expect to also see natural gas liquids there. The thing that you want to keep in mind is whatever the price of gas was for that month times this wet gas number, that value, multiplied by your decimal in that well, should be at least what you got before any post-production deductions, if that is allowed in your lease. So if you're looking at Natural gas liquids, those are usually more valuable than the actual gas itself. So the natural gas liquids plus the value of the royalties for the gas that you were paid should equal this gas number here times whatever the historical gas price is for that month. Again, keeping in mind that this is in the Uinta Basin, so the gas price might be higher or lower than Henry Hub. So you'd have to do a little bit of research to figure that out. And likewise with oil, the price you were paid for oil might be higher or lower than West Texas Intermediate. And oftentimes in the Uinta Basin, because there's a lot of transportation costs that take the oil via train from the Uinta Basin to the refineries, the price you're actually paid at the wellhead is a lot lower than WTI. But at least with this information, Justin, you can figure out are the volumes roughly correct looking at my check statement.
Absolutely, Matt. And we talk a lot about that being a great thing to do regularly, whether it's at the end of the year with getting taxes ready or whether that's just intermittently.
Yeah, exactly. So, Justin, what other questions come to mind for you that we would want to explore, looking at the state agency website?
Certainly, we're looking for activity. So, what kind of work is going on in that well? Is there any rework going on? Are they getting ready to drill wells if it's just been permitted? Information like that can really help mineral right owners to know what's coming next or what's happening.
Yeah, that's a great point. So one place you can do that here is in the well history. This is different for other websites. They have it in the actual files. Maybe they don't have a record of like the chronologically what has happened. In this case, to your point, Justin, maybe we stopped getting royalties in 2020 and we were worried about what's going on. Well, if we came to this website, we'd see that they changed the well pump and the well was shut in. It looks like that was submitted around December of 2020. And then another sundry was filed in January of 2021. So that well looks like it probably was down for about a month. And so if we were to go to the production history and look for 2020 in December, sure enough, the well shows it was shut in. If you look at that well history, it might have the reason why. And so that's really useful information that you can see if you missed getting a royalty statement for that month. Going to the State Oil and Gas Commission website is a great way to figure out what is happening. And is it just that there's an operational issue that's going to be corrected? Or did they plug and abandon the well? Or what's going on? So that's a great point as well. So so again, the Utah Division of Natural Resources Oil and Gas website is pretty useful. Has a lot of this information available for free. So kudos to them for making that available. All this is publicly available information. It should be free, unlike some other states, namely North Dakota, that charge you to view this type of information. Again, to your point, Justin, if we had minerals in this section 3, what this tells me in looking at the Utah website is if there's room for additional wells, I would say looking at the map, probably up to 6 additional wells could be drilled. Now, again, depending on which part of the Uinta Basin we're in and what the geology looks like, and this is, I know from experience, this part of the Uinta Basin, they are drilling in different formation, different depths. So you'd have the Wasatch, Green River, different formations that they're targeting. So again, looking at the well spacing from some of these other existing wells and where there are permits, it looks like they're drilling, roughly 6 to 7 wells per spacing unit. So the good news here is if I had minerals again in section 3, I would be anticipating that hopefully in the next several years, Oventive, who is the operator in this case, will come in and permit some additional wells and drill them, and then we should see an additional bump in royalties. And so, again, if you were to get any purchase offers or anything like that, or lease offers, and you aren't receiving royalties, you can come in here to the website to figure out are there wells that are permitted and understand what the activity level is, what the future might hold in terms of additional royalties and things like that. And so that can help you gauge what to do with that property. So again, just a little bit of a summary on how to navigate the Utah oil and gas website. It's fairly user friendly. Again, you have to do a little bit of clicking around sometimes to find things, but if you start off with the well information, you can go through, you can find spacing order details, often the same sort of interface. You can look at the well bore and see, for those of you that want to get into the details of seeing what the casing string looks like and what formation. In this case, they're targeting the Uteland Butte, which this is a really cool way to see the geology here and see which of those stacked formations they're actually going after. And like I said, this could be a situation where They have wells that are going after the Castle Peak, Uteland Butte, and even deeper. So you can kind of see how those stack out. If there's multiple wells in that spacing unit, you can click on each of those and look at what depths and what formations they're going after. So really handy information, stuff that you should be able to do and to figure out if you're getting paid correctly. So again, this is just an example using Utah. We'll cover other states in the future. If you have a request, you can email us at feedback@mineralrightspodcast.com to let us know what state you'd like us to cover next, and we'll be sure to put it on the list. So thanks again for watching this video. Thanks again, Justin.
Thanks, Matt.